Yeah, my name's Mike McCabe, and I founded the NEOTT Trials Club in late 1969, I think. We may be the second or third oldest trials club in America. I had gotten interested in trials by reading an English motorcycle paper, and I'd bought a trials bike, and I couldn't find the trials to ride in. So I was hanging out at a place called Tulsa Triumph, and there was a man there named Ray Brazil that was a well-known enduro bike rider. And he said, why don't you form a club and have events and then you can ride? And I said, well, that sounds like a pretty good idea. That's how it came about. What I did was I saw an ad in this British paper that said Castrol, the oil company, had a film about trials that they would loan to trials clubs. And I thought, well, I wonder if I could borrow that. So I went through a lady in New Jersey and she got me a copy of it, and I put an ad in the Tulsa paper under motorbikes saying that I was going to show this film, and if you were interested in trials, come look at it. And I got a room at a bank, and 88 people showed up. And we showed the film, and I passed around a clipboard and said, anybody that'd be interested in forming a trials club, sign up. And about 30 guys signed up. So a month later, I called all those guys, and we got together and formed NEOTT. And that's how it happened. Like in 1971, the Michigan Trials Association put on the first ever championship event, a one-day event that would name a national champion. And all of us went to that were interested. It was in Cycle News maybe, or something. We all went, and we got to making connections that way. But it was difficult, Jason, to be honest. It was just hard. What happened in my case was guys like Kirk and Ronnie Lee wanted to ride just like you did when you were young, and they hooked up with me because they'd see me riding at an event, you know, and I just made friends, and it just grew from that. Never tried to promote it. I just wanted to ride, to be quite honest with you. I just wanted to ride all the time. And it just so happened that guys were interested enough to start coming around, and then I formed the friendships. But I didn't actually go out looking for people to ride with. I just wanted to have events. No, it was hard to come by people that even knew about it, much less wanted to do it. And then I think more than anything, when the TY 250 came out, the 74 Yamaha, and Yamaha promoted it so much and so hard that's what really got it started, to be honest.
But you're known more as a Bull Taco guy. Tell
Right.
me how that friendship came, how you got on Bull Taco, and Senior Bull Toe and all that.
It was funny, I was just telling your dad that story. I had met Mick Andrews when he was doing trial schools. And when he got hurt, he stayed at our house after he had his surgery. And he kept encouraging me to come. I'd won a couple of his trials, and he kept encouraging me to come to ride the Scottish 6-day. So I decided to do it. And I went over with Kirk, and Senor Bulto came to the Scottish on the Wednesday. And he was a very important man in the industry, and so it was a big to-do. And he saw me ride, and he came up to me, and I had an American flag on my jacket, and he wanted to talk to me about trials in America. Well, luckily I was raised in South America and I spoke Spanish. So when he started talking to me, I started talking back to him in Spanish, and he got real interested. And he wanted to know what the trial scene in America was going to be like, how big it was going to be. Well, I didn't know, but I told him what I thought I knew. And so he said, well, look, this evening we're staying at the New Milton Hotel, the whole Bull Taco team is. They have Lampkin and Rathmel and all the big names. He said, why don't you come to our dinner tonight, and I'll introduce you. So I did. And then at the end of the trial, we were finishing, and he came over to me and said, congratulations for finishing the trial. He said, is there anything, he said, I'd like to give you something. And that's very typical of Spanish people. And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, what would you like? And I said, well, the only thing I know of that I really want is one of those new conical front hubs that nobody but the factory guys have. He said, I'll get you one. Give me your address. So I did. So about a month later, I got a call from Jandibers, who was the bull taco dealer in Tulsa, and said there was a package for me there at their dealership. And I went down there, and I was expecting a hub, and it was a complete brand new factory trials bike. And he had sent me a brand new trials motorcycle with all the latest factory stuff on it. And Jandiber didn't want to give it to me because he didn't have any paperwork on it or anything. So finally we settled all that up. And from then on, he had his representative in the United States, Mr. Grace, in Virginia Beach, was told by Senor Bulto that I was to get bikes. And so for the next 11 years, I just got free bikes all the time, anytime I wanted one. And that was all just from being in the right place, right? Not because I was a great rider or anything. They had other guys like Levitt and them that were really winning. But in this area, I sold a lot of bikes, you know, like your dad loves them and everybody likes them. Well, I rode them and won a lot on them, and that was one of the reasons. Then in '74, when they became really available through the Yamaha dealerships, trials took off here, and I'm sure everywhere else.
So you have quite an affinity for the bull taco. That's your bike.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I love bull tacos. I'll always have an affinity for bull tacos. Yeah.
Do you think it was more the bull taco, or do you think it was the camaraderie and the friendship you developed with Senor Bulto?
Oh, for sure it was that, because I was getting free bikes. And then at the time, the bull taco was the bike to have. It was the winning bike. You know, it was the better bike. Later surpassed by the other bikes, but yeah.
You're the first American, I believe, to ride the 6-day.
Yes.
That's an incredible statistic as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think it is. I've lived on it and thought about it all my life. It's had a profound effect on the way I've thought about everything, and I thought, why did I do it? And then I thought, well, you know, how did I even get up the nerve to do it? I don't know. I just wanted to ride that bad, and I wanted to do it. And I've gotten a lot of recognition for it, and I didn't do very well. I'd never ridden more than one day in my life.
You decide you're going to ride the 6-day in 72?
73.
73 was the first year?
No, 72.
You don't just go.
No, it was difficult. I had to first. I communicated with the people in Scotland, and I found out I had to have an FIM competition license. Well, in America, FIM's AMA. So I called AMA, and they had no idea what I was talking about. A lady up there said she'd find out. So they got me a FIM competition license issued through AMA, and I applied and got an entry. They have a restricted entry for the Scottish of about 250 riders, but they keep some reserved for foreigners and stuff like that. So I got an entry and had no idea what I was doing, and went over there with Kirk, and I had arranged to borrow a bike from Sammy Miller because I was selling some of his parts. And but at that time you were expected to provide your own fuel and support. And so for 6 days, you've got to have somebody helping you out there with gas. So that was Kirky. And that was really crazy. He wasn't old enough to drive, but he was driving around in England with a station wagon full of gasoline, trying to keep me fueled up and going for 6 days. And I had no idea what I was doing when I went the first time. But I had help from Bull Taco, and I had help from Mick Andrews, and then Kirk helped me, and it was a great adventure.
Kirk was 17 at the time?
No, he was 15.
15.
He couldn't, you have to be 16 to ride the Scottish 6-day trial. He couldn't ride, and so he was my support. His dad let him go with me. His dad paid his way over there.
So the best you could find was a 15-year-old kid who couldn't drive?
I didn't know anybody else that was interested enough in trials to take off for 3 weeks and pay their own way to England, because I couldn't afford to pay them. And so his dad knew me and trusted me enough to let Kirk go with me, and we had a great time. Great time.
I can't imagine the
it
memories.
Was insane. Yeah, it was really just driving around in England. First thing we did for the first 3 days we were in London, we went to all the bike shops that we'd read about, you know, and all the trials guys had their own shops, the big name trials guys, and we'd go see them, and they were all excited because I was an American coming to ride the trial. And then a side story is that I was taking this British motorcycle paper, and I was getting it sent to me airmail, so I had to talk to them on the phone about how to get they didn't have a way to, they didn't have people that were taking it by America. And I met the subscription manager and told him I was coming. Well, he put it in their paper. And so people knew I was coming for it, and I got interviewed, you know, about it, being an American. And he arranged for Kirk and I to rent a car. He's the one that knew how to rent a car. In '72, there weren't Hertzes and stuff in England, you know, so it was really crazy, but it was a blast.
And he's driving on the wrong side of the road too.
On the wrong side of the road without a driver's license. It was just crazy.
And at one point he fell asleep, I recall.
We were on our way to Scotland in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden we were out in the median of a 4-lane highway spinning around in circles, and I was sleeping in the back of the station wagon, and parts started flying all around, and Kirk had gone to sleep at the wheel and spun out. We didn't get hurt. It was just something, yeah. Great memories. And then, of course, I remember meeting you when you first started, and you wanted to go riding every single day. Every day you'd call me, can we go riding this afternoon? Can we go riding this afternoon? Great.
What is it about trials that infects us like that?
I don't know.
It sounds like you got infected the same way.
I did. And it was funny, I was trying to ride trials on modified street bikes because I saw pictures of it in the magazines. And then a guy named Doug Drillinger here in Tulsa got a Greaves, the first trials bike in Tulsa. And he called me and said, come out and ride this. And I stood up on it, and when I stood up on it, to this day, I remember the feeling right now. When I stood up on it, I thought, no wonder they stand up. This is wonderful. Because I'd been trying to ride a street bike, and you couldn't ride them standing up, and it just stuck with me, just like you know. It's just, you just, and there's guys have come and gone for years. You'll get a guy that'll get in, and he's just great, and in 6 months or a year he's gone. And then there's other guys that I've known my whole life, and I see around here that you just like it. Just love it. I don't know. It's just like one of the few sports where you can go ride a trial with the big name trials riders, and you ride right beside them. You might not do quite as well as they do, but you're just as interested. You're just as being observed. They're friendly to you. You're friendly to them. It's really a neat sport, and it's also very family orientated. Lots and lots of people get their children in this. You get a young boy that wants to race motorcycles, and I know one particular case. His dad did not want him racing, but the kid wanted to ride so bad, and so his dad came to us as the club and said, could you get my boy involved in this and keep him from racing? So there's one reason people get into it and get their children into it. And it's just so family orientated. You come out here and everybody's out here and their kids are riding, and my wife actually tried to ride some, you know, so it's, you know.
And it's a unique sport that it's not necessarily, you might beat me on the scorecard, but that rock is what beat me. That turn is what beat me.
That's always the way I've always thought about it too. I never was one of the people that was terribly competitive to the point that I had to beat people, but I always thought I was challenging two things, the terrain and the guy that had laid it out, to see if I could outsmart him and find a way to get through a section that he hadn't seen that I could do. So, you know, like you say, it's you don't have to beat a guy. It's the rocks, the terrain, the hill climb, whatever beats you, or you beat it.
The first national you guys put on.
To put on a national here, you had to be an AMA club. So we wanted to do a national, but none of the club members wanted to join AMA, because then you had to join AMA, You had to pay an entry fee at every trial. So we decided to start a club to put on the trial, but be a separate club from NEOTT in order to evade the AMA rules and regulations. So we decided, we'd heard about PITS, Pacific International Trials, and I don't know, maybe me or somebody thought, what about Tulsa International Trials? And that turned into TITS. It's just stupid. This has been an amazing revelation to me, and I've thought about this some since I talked to you about it. We've had 3 people, including Kevin here. The very first guy was a very wealthy man in Tulsa named Stan Brander, and he owned a mile section at 81st, between 81st and 91st, between Harvard and Yale. And that was our first trials ground, called Brander's, and he let us have trials out there until he finally had to sell it because it got so expensive. Then we had another guy that was in the club named Paul Messick. He was a builder here in Tulsa, and he had a boy that rode, and he bought a piece of property down at Bixby, Oklahoma, called Stone Mountain, and he bought it specifically to ride trials on and let the club have trials, and that's where we had our first national. In 1974, we put on a national there, and I think very importantly for NEOTT is that year, the guy that won the national championship series won our trial, and that was what cinched the championship for him. So the first national championship was cinched by a guy winning our trial.
Wow.
And also in 74, the first year they had a national countrywide series, the NATC sent out a ballot to each and every rider that entered any of the 8 or 9 events. And you were to judge the event for all these various categories. And in 74 and 75, NEOTT was voted the best trial in America 2 consecutive years, the best national in the country.
Really?
That to me was huge for NEOTT. And then, in addition to that, we've had a number of our NEOTT members that have won national championships. You know, we've had guys that have won senior nationals, high school nationals, sportsmen's nationals, all members of this club. So this club has been hugely influential on the trial scene in America, in my opinion.
What's it do to you knowing that this is something you started back in the 60s, and there's still a bunch of goobers who are just as fired up about it,
Yeah.
all that many years later?
I've thought a lot to myself. It wasn't me, but it was the fact that I kind of opened the venue because all these guys aren't riding on account of me. They're riding on account of they love the sport and it's fun to do. But at least I gave them a venue, and I'm happy about that. And I'm just so happy that the club is so big and going so well, doing so well after all these years. It gives me a great bit of satisfaction, yeah.
Talk about the vintage, what we're doing on the Saturday, how we just kicked that off. We found out just 2 nights ago that the Kansas club is going to adopt the same thing, and
Yeah.
they're going to do vintage on Saturday.
I think it's really, to me, it's very, very heartwarming because I love the vintage bikes. The other thing that I've noticed or found out since you guys started that is how huge this vintage twin shock thing is going around America right now. It's just blossoming, and NEOTT again is right at the forefront, you know, right in the middle of it. I think it's great. I think it'll get more guys back in, and guys, older guys maybe will get back in. Look at Kirk, he's revitalized himself from it, you know.
Let's talk about Kirk a bit, the friendship you have with that guy.
Yeah. Well, my wife and I tease him about being our other kid, you know, and he was just that guy that wanted to ride and came around because I had bikes, and his dad had a business, and he was helping Kirk with bikes, and Kirk was wanting to go riding with me all the time, and I'd take him with me whenever I went, and we've just stayed friends all these years, you know, and we weren't together much until he got back into the vintage thing. I think he said he had a midlife crisis and decided he wanted to get back into trials and immediately hurt himself, I think. But he stayed with it, and that's gotten us back closer and closer together now, because I help him with bikes, and I'm interested in his new career, so to speak.
Yeah. Interesting enough, kind of how my friendship with Kirky happened. He shows up at an event, and who's the old guy with the old bike? Don't you know we don't ride those anymore,
yeah,
sir? But here, let me help you out of the truck. Let me help you with your bike out. And he hurts himself, and we're like, well, we won't see that guy.
No.
And we just knew his name was Kirk. We didn't really know anything about him. Well, he gets healed up, and he shows back up at an event. And we're like, well, he's glutton for punishment. And he starts hanging around the campfires a little bit more, and he starts dropping some names. Bernie Schreiber and Lane Levitt.
Yeah.
And the biggest names in trials, and we're like, who's this name drop? This guy's more full of crap than a stopped up sewer. And then he pulls out his cell phone. And he's like, well, here I am with Bernie, and this is McCabe, and this is Lane Levitt. Here we are at the Scottish.
Yeah. And
I had no idea that he was that decorated of a rider.
Yeah.
And was that good and that well known right under our nose.
Yeah.
But
no, he is. He's a good guy, and he's really, really dedicated to fixing these old bikes up and making them better. Amazingly, the next year after he was old enough to ride, he in the Scottish in '73, he got an entry.
Kirk Mayfield all the way from Oklahoma.
Well, he was hooked up with Norm McDonald, and Norm got him a ride on a factory Yamaha, and he went over there and rode the bike that Mick Andrews had won the trial on the year before, and did really, really well. Got a first class award. I mean, and made great friends over there that he still has. And that's the way trials is. You make friends and you see them the rest of your life, and it's always talking about trials. I have one friend in particular hasn't ridden in years. I see him at car shows, and he'll say, I was driving down the road the other day and I looked up this rocky canyon off the side of the road, and I thought, I can do that, I can get up that, and you do that the rest of your life. You look at creeks and hills and wonder if you could ride up them.
That gets in. I don't think that ever goes away, does it?
No, I don't think it does. Not for me, it doesn't. I want to ride so bad now I can taste it. I just can't anymore. I've got hurt so much, and I've gotten so old I can't balance, and I don't want to leave my wife by herself.
Founding member of the club, a lifetime member, one of the few. He doesn't know this, but today we're also going to name Kirk Mayfield a lifetime member.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Mike McCabe is the founding father, lifetime member. John Studley is a lifetime member. Mike Cramsey is a lifetime member. Tommy Moore.
Bill, Bob Kelly.
Bob Kelly is a lifetime member.
There's about 6, I think.
That's 6. And today we want to go ahead and name number 7. This is one of the most decorated riders that our club has. He's ridden the Scottish 6-day twice. He went over in '72 with Mike to ride as the first American to ride the 6-day. This guy was the first American to be the gas man. He wasn't old enough to drive, but since Kirk Mayfield has come back from his 40-year hiatus, he has sent our club to a new level. Not only our club, but we just found out AVTA is adopting the same practice we are, doing a vintage on Saturday, modern on Sunday. And it's all because this old fart right here. So today we want to name Kirk Mayfield a lifetime NEOTT member for his outstanding commitment and dedication to the Northeast Oklahoma Trials team.
That'll blow him away.
What does that do for you? Knowing that
Just about to tear up. Yeah. I like him that much. And that's such an honor coming from the club for anybody, that just makes me feel good. Yeah.
The legendary names in trials, Sammy Miller on your shirt,
Yeah.
Mick Andrews.
Right.
These were your buddies.
Yeah. Yeah. Sammy, I was a dealer for his equipment, and we became friends. And now Sam's kind of a hard guy to get to be friends with, but now after all these years, we're friends now. I mean, he calls me his friend. And then Mick, He's my daughter's godfather. I mean, we talk once a week on the phone, and we go visit them, and they come visit us here. You know, they've been here 3 or 4 times, and it's just Graham Jarvis, the big hot dog enduro rider. He's a trials rider. I know him, Rathmore, Nolas, and it's not because it's just because they know everybody and everybody knows them. If you were over there, you'd be just as much friends with Mick and Sammy, because that's just the way they are with trials people. That's just the way trials people are.
It's their people.
Yeah, it's just those Mick Andrews, of all the whole people in the world, he don't think he's nobody. He's just a trials rider, and he likes you because you're a trials rider. That's why he likes me. You know.
The chair you're sitting in, we dug it out of the trash and dubbed it McCabe's Throne. And that every time you win a vintage event out here, your name goes on that chair. What do you think of that?
It cracks me up. I'm sitting in a chair that came out of the trash, and I think that's about where I am. Yeah, that's great. That's
You
great.
come out and you see kids and you see dogs and the ribbon and the bikes.
Yeah.
Does it take you right back to?
Absolutely, instantly. It must have been 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. One time I stopped out at the place in Bixby at Stone Mountain where we had our national, and there was nobody there or anything. I just parked the truck and got off and walked up this one little canyon, and about halfway up it, I found a piece of tape around a tree, just barely discernible. You touch it, it just disintegrated. And I thought, wow, this was where we had a section. Yeah, it never goes away. I don't know what it is about it.